I stood there, frozen, wearing the dress I had dreamed of since I was 12. My hands were trembling, wrapped tightly around a bouquet of white lilies, his favorite, not mine. My heart beat so loudly in my chest it felt like the only sound in the entire cathedral. Hundreds of eyes were on me. The murmurs had started. They started soft, like distant thunder. Then louder. One of my bridesmaids touched my arm gently, her face already filled with pity. I wasn't ready to face that he wasn't there. The priest glanced at me awkwardly, the page of his ceremony script fluttering slightly from the fan above. A bead of sweat rolled down the side of my face. My lips parted but no words came out. I searched the room with my eyes, clinging to any possibility that this was a cruel joke. A delay. Maybe his car broke down. Maybe he panicked and hid in the restroom. Maybe, anything that wasn't what this really was, but he never showed up. Someone whispered, "He left her." Another voice replied, "At the altar?" That's cold. I wanted to scream, to vanish, to undo the last year of my life. Instead, I stood in my white heels like a mannequin, beautiful, dressed up, hollow inside that I don't remember who led me away. Maybe it was my mother. Maybe it was no one. The next thing I remember was sitting in the back seat of a car. The veil clung to my face with every breath I took. I felt like I was suffocating beneath layers of tulle, expectation, and humiliation. For days, I didn't leave my apartment. The walls felt closer every hour. The pitying messages, the phone calls I couldn't bear to answer, the endless, "Are you okay?" texts that only made it worse. As if anyone could be okay after that. He didn't just walk away from a ceremony, he walked away from me. Without a word. No warning. No explanation. Just disappeared like I was nothing. The worst part? I would have forgiven him if he had just told me. Talk to me. But he vanished like a coward, left me standing in front of everyone who mattered to me, looking like a fool. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call that it was his sister. We had barely spoken before. She always struck me as sharp, polished, intimidating. The kind of woman who could break you with a look and never raise her voice. She asked to meet. Her tone wasn't soft or apologetic. It was businesslike. Cold that I almost didn't go. I almost deleted the message. But curiosity, or maybe desperation, pulled me there. I walked into a towering glass building. She owned the top floor. Of course she did. The elevator ride felt eternal. My fingers clenched my purse the entire time. When the doors opened, she was standing there already, staring out the window like some ice queen out of a movie. She turned when she heard my footsteps, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. Then she looked at me, really looked, and said the last thing I expected, "I have a proposal." What she offered wasn't comfort or an apology on her brother's behalf. She offered a fake marriage. And I should have walked out. I should have laughed. I should have screamed at her, but instead, I sat down and listened, and something inside me, some broken, bitter part, said yes. I couldn't feel my legs as I walked down the aisle. My mind kept saying, "This is it, this is real, this is happening," but something in my gut felt wrong. My steps were slow, deliberate, like I was forcing my body to keep going while my heart begged me to turn back. Everyone was watching. My mother clutched her chest, my friends wiped away tears, and I tried my best to smile. But where was he? The music played too long. The priest looked confused. I stood there, bouquet trembling in my hands, waiting for him to come through those grand wooden doors. Any second now. Any moment. My stomach twisted with each passing minute. It wasn't nerves. It was fear. Then someone stepped forward and whispered something in the priest's ear. I saw his face fall, and that was when I knew. He wasn't coming at him. My lips parted, but I couldn't speak. I looked around helplessly. The priest looked at me, then at the guests. A hushed murmur started to ripple through the crowd. I could hear someone in the back say, "Is this real?" Another voice said, "He bailed." My cheeks burned, my skin felt too tight for my body, like I was shrinking under their stares. No one moved to help me. They just stared. Like watching a car crash happen in slow motion. I blinked, once, twice, hoping maybe this was a nightmare I'd wake up from. But it wasn't. He left me at the altar. The next thing I knew, I was in the dressing room. Someone had brought me water. Someone else tried to take my veil off, but I pushed their hands away. I didn't want to be touched. I didn't want anyone to see me like this. My phone buzzed. A message from his mother. "I'm so sorry." I dropped the phone on the floor. It felt like the whole world was spinning too fast, and I was the only one who hadn't caught up. I cried. Not delicate, pretty tears. Ugly, heaving sobs that hurt my ribs. He was supposed to be my future. My forever. I had planned everything, dreamed everything, for us. I gave him my heart, my trust, my time, and he vanished like I was nothing. That I didn't leave my apartment for a week. I let the food go cold. The lights stayed off. I ignored everyone. My mother came to the door once, left a bag of groceries and a card. I never opened the card. I didn't want her pity. I didn't want anyone's pity. I wanted answers, and he wouldn't give them. No calls, no texts. He just disappeared like a ghost. I lay on the couch in my dress for 2 days before I finally peeled it off, piece by piece, like tearing off a scab. Every layer reminded me of that day. The dress. The shoes. The veil. I stuffed them into a garbage bag and shoved it in the back of the closet. It still smelled like roses and regret. When my phone rang again, I almost didn't answer. The number was unknown. Something told me not to pick it up. But I did. Her voice was unmistakable, smooth, firm, a little cold. "It's Claire," she said. His sister. I sat up, caught off guard. We had barely spoken during the planning. She always felt distant, too important to care about the wedding. I remember thinking she looked more like a model than a CEO. Always dressed sharp, always watching. "Can we meet?" she asked. I hesitated. "Why?" I asked softly. She paused. "It's about my brother," she said. And then, quieter, "And you." Something about the way she said it made my skin prickle. I didn't know what to expect, but I said yes. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I wanted revenge. Or maybe I was just desperate for someone to explain why the man I loved had destroyed me. I put on real clothes for the first time in days. My hands trembled as I buttoned my blouse. I stared at myself in the mirror, my eyes hollow, lips pale. But I went. I needed something. Anything. Just not more silence. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and I stepped onto the top floor of one of the most intimidating buildings I had ever entered. Everything gleamed, polished marble, glass walls, sleek furniture that looked more like art than comfort. I felt out of place immediately, my heels tapping nervously against the glossy floor. The receptionist nodded without saying a word, already expecting me, and gestured toward the corner office at the end of the corridor. I walked slowly, each step echoing my uncertainty. When I reached the door, it was already open. She was standing by the window, arms crossed, back straight, looking out at the skyline like she owned it, which she probably did. Claire turned when she heard me. Her expression was unreadable, eyes sharp, jaw set. Not a hint of warmth. She gestured for me to sit without saying hello. I didn't. I stayed standing. I didn't know what this was, or why I was even here. She finally spoke. "I'm not here to explain what my brother did," she said, her voice cool but precise. "He's an idiot. And a coward. And I'm angry with him too." Her words were blunt, but I didn't feel better. If anything, it hurt more. "Then why am I here?" I asked. I didn't bother hiding the bitterness in my voice. Claire's gaze met mine, calm but intense. Because I have a proposal, she said that. I blinked, unsure if I heard her right. A proposal? I repeated, confused. Yes, she said, walking to her desk and pulling out a folder. She handed it to me. It was full of legal jargon and contracts I couldn't process. I skimmed the first page and felt my stomach twist. A marriage contract. Between me and her. I stared at the paper, then at her. What is this? I asked. You want to pretend to be my wife? She nodded once. For the media. For business. My board is threatening to take over after what my brother did. Public embarrassment, scandal, broken engagement, it reflects badly on the company. I laughed, but it came out more like a sharp breath. So you want to fix your image by marrying the woman your brother abandoned? She didn't flinch. Yes. It was so ridiculous, so surreal, that I couldn't speak for a moment. I dropped the folder onto the desk. You're unbelievable, I said. Claire didn't argue. She just looked at me. Not smug. Not smug at all. Just tired. Serious. You don't have to say yes, she said. But think about it. You get to show him what he lost. And I get to shut everyone up. There was a pause, long, heavy. I wanted to walk out. I wanted to scream. But instead, I stood there, silent. My thoughts raced. I hated her brother. I hated everything he had done. And part of me wanted to hit back. To show him he didn't get to ruin me and walk away like nothing happened. Claire watched me, waiting. What's in it for me? I asked finally, my voice cold. Claire stepped forward slightly. You get everything, she said. The penthouse. The status. The control. You won't have to lift a finger. Just appearances. We act like a couple in public, play nice for the cameras. And when it's over, we walk away clean. Her tone was business, but her eyes held something else. A flicker of curiosity, maybe. Or something deeper, more buried. I hated how tempted I felt. I hated how good it sounded. Not because I wanted money or luxury, but because I wanted him to see me in headlines next to his sister. I wanted him to regret ever leaving me. That I took the folder again, this time slower, flipping through the pages. My heart pounded. This wasn't me. I wasn't the type to play games, to seek revenge, to get into fake marriages with powerful CEOs. But then again, I wasn't the type to be left at the altar either. I looked at Claire. She didn't smile. She didn't pressure me. She just waited. And then, without fully understanding why, I nodded. Okay, I said quietly. Let's do it. Claire's eyes flickered, just for a second, with something like approval. But it disappeared just as fast. We start tomorrow, she said. No backing out. I nodded again, but inside I was trembling. I had no idea what I had just signed up for. The wedding was nothing like the one I had planned with him. It was faster, colder, and carefully staged. No emotion, no dreams, no personal vows, just a contract dressed up in white and gold. Cameras surrounded us as we walked toward each other in the small hall she had booked last minute. She wore a perfectly tailored cream suit, sharp and elegant. I wore a new dress. Not the one I had cried in. This one was simpler, cleaner, like it had no memory. Her hand reached for mine as we stood before the officiant, and I almost flinched. But her fingers were warm, steady. She held my hand as if it meant something. Even though it didn't. Not yet, that we said our lines like actors reading from a script. The officiant smiled, the photographers snapped away, and people clapped on cue. I smiled too, but only with my lips. Inside, I was somewhere else. Back in that first wedding. Back where I was still waiting for a man who never came. Claire turned to me, placing a polite kiss on my cheek for the cameras. It was soft, practiced. I smiled again, pretending. But for a moment, when she pulled back and looked at me, something in her expression wasn't fake. Her eyes lingered, just for a second, and I couldn't tell if she was trying to read me or let herself be seen. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Photos, fake toasts, staged laughter. At some point, I found myself standing beside her at the top of a balcony overlooking the city. The sun was setting, and for once, no one else was around. Claire handed me a glass of champagne. To survival, she said dryly. I raised mine, clinked it gently. To pretending. We drank in silence. The wind tugged at my hair, and I caught her watching me. Not with judgment. More like curiosity. I turned away, flustered, unsure why that gaze felt so intimate. Later, we were taken to the penthouse suite. Of course, the media expected us to spend the night there. Another part of the illusion. Claire walked in ahead of me, heels clicking against the marble. The place was stunning, massive windows, soft lighting, furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. But all I could see was the bed in the center of the room and the question it raised. She turned, noticing the way I paused. You'll take the bedroom, she said calmly. I'll sleep on the sofa. Or in my office. Whatever's more comfortable for you. I nodded, unsure what to say. Thanks, I murmured. She walked to the bar, poured herself a drink, and leaned against the counter. You okay? She asked, finally breaking the silence. I looked at her, surprised. I don't know, I admitted. None of this feels real. She nodded slowly. It isn't. But we're going to make it look like it is. I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. What if I'm not good at pretending? I asked quietly. Claire's gaze softened just slightly. You'll be fine, she said. You've already made it through the worst part. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe this strange, cold arrangement could somehow help me forget what he did. But instead, all I felt was hollowed as I closed the door to the bedroom behind me and sat on the edge of the bed, still in the dress, still trying to breathe normally. I stared at my reflection in the mirror across the room. I didn't look like me. I looked like someone playing a role. A woman who said, I do, to someone she barely knew, not out of love, but because her heart had been shattered and this was the only way to put the pieces somewhere else. I laid down, not bothering to change, and stared at the ceiling. I could still hear her moving in the other room. Quiet, controlled, always composed. I wondered who she was when no one was looking. And I wondered why, when she had touched my hand earlier, I didn't want to pull away. The following days unfolded in carefully measured routines. Public events, social gatherings, appearances at charity galas, company luncheons, always together, always hand in hand. We were the new headline couple, the elegant CEO and the mysteriously betrayed bride-turned-wife. Cameras loved us. The public adored the story, called it poetic justice. They didn't know the truth behind our perfect smiles and posed affection. Each time she reached for my hand in public, my skin buzzed, not from love, but from the tension of pretending. And yet, something in her touch didn't feel completely fake. There was care in the way her fingers closed around mine, like she wanted to shield me from the world, even if only for a moment. At night, the silence between us grew less uncomfortable. We'd sit in the living room with tea or wine, barely speaking, but something unspoken lingered. One evening, I came out of the shower to find her sitting on the floor, hair down, papers scattered around her. She looked up at me, exhausted, the weight of the company resting on her shoulders. "You work too much," I said without thinking. She raised an eyebrow. "You don't even know what I do," she replied, but her voice was softer than usual. I sat on the couch across from her, tucking my legs beneath me. "Then tell me," I said. "Tell me what's under the armor." She hesitated, as if surprised I cared. Then slowly, she started to speak. About pressure, expectations, being the one who always had to clean up her brother's messes. How being in charge never meant she got to feel in control. Her voice trembled just once, but it was enough to undo something in me. I listened, really listened, and for the first time I saw her not as a powerful CEO or the sister of the man who ruined me, but as a woman, bruised by life in ways I hadn't expected. She looked down at her hands when she finished. "I didn't want to do this to you," she said quietly. "I just didn't know how else to make things right." I reached for her hand, not out of obligation, but instinct. She let me take it, her fingers cold but steady. "You didn't do anything to me," I said. "He did. You're just the one helping me stand again." There was a long silence. The kind that feels heavy with meaning. Her eyes met mine, and in them, I saw something shift. Not love. Not yet. But a breaking down of walls. A shared understanding. Two people who had been hurt in different ways but found themselves forced into the same story. The days that followed became easier. She'd smile a little more. I'd joke with her during interviews. We became good at pretending. So good, sometimes I forgot it wasn't real. Sometimes I caught myself watching her longer than necessary, wondering what it would be like if it was. One night, after another exhausting dinner event, we returned to the penthouse. She kicked off her heels and dropped onto the couch with a groan. I laughed. "Not so graceful now," I teased. She gave me a rare, real smile. "You're not so cold anymore," she shot back. I made us tea, and we sat in the dim glow of the kitchen light. Comfortable. Quiet. A soft kind of peace. She looked at me, eyes thoughtful. "Do you miss him?" she asked suddenly. The question hit like a soft blow. I didn't answer at first. Then I nodded. Not him exactly. Just what I thought we had. I stared at the tea in my hands. I missed the illusion. She didn't press. Just nodded, like she understood more than she let on. Then, after a long pause, she asked, "Do you trust me?" The room felt heavier. I met her gaze. Her face was open, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. "I don't know," I whispered. "But I want to." She looked down, then back up. "That's enough." Something changed that night. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but quietly, like a thread pulling two people closer without either of them noticing. She wasn't just the woman saving her reputation anymore. She was the one whose presence didn't feel like a cage. And I wasn't just the bride left behind. I was someone she saw, someone she chose. Even if it started as a lie, it was beginning to feel real in the spaces between the silence. The more time we spent together in public, the more tangled everything became behind closed doors. Our photos were on blogs, in magazines, trending online. Power couple of the year, they called us. People speculated about our chemistry, praised our elegance, envied our life. But none of them knew the truth. That the glances we exchanged in front of cameras were carefully rehearsed, that every touch was measured, every smile calculated. And yet, somewhere along the way, the line between real and pretend began to blur in ways I couldn't ignore. I started noticing the small things she did, the way she gently placed her hand on my lower back when guiding me through a crowd, the way her voice softened when she spoke to me privately, the way her eyes lingered just a little too long when I laughed. I told myself it was still fake, just part of the act. But my heart didn't always listen. One evening, at a charity ball, we stood together beneath a canopy of golden lights. She looked breathtaking in a dark navy gown, her hair swept back, her presence commanding as always. I wore a dress she had personally picked for me, something softer than usual, something that made me feel seen. As we posed for the press, her hand rested lightly at my waist. She leaned in to whisper, "You look beautiful tonight," her breath warm against my ear. It was a whisper only I could hear, and I didn't know whether to smile or retreat. I did both, my chest tightening in ways I hadn't felt since him. But this was different. It didn't come with lies or grand promises. It came with silence, with glances, with quiet intimacy we hadn't agreed to share. Later that night, I caught her watching me from across the room while she spoke to a board member. Her expression wasn't one of performance. It was soft, curious, almost protective. When our eyes met, she didn't look away. Something stirred inside me, a question I didn't want to answer yet. After the event, in the car, neither of us said much. The city lights flickered outside, and the tension between us buzzed like static. She finally broke the silence. "You don't have to keep pretending when it's just us," she said. I turned to her. "Is that what I'm doing?" She looked at me, a faint crease between her brows. "I don't know. Are you?" Her words stayed with me long after we got home. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what this all meant. We weren't supposed to care. We weren't supposed to feel. But the way she looked at me, the way her fingers had brushed mine as she handed me a drink, the way she smiled when no one else was around, it didn't feel like pretending. And worse, I didn't want it to be. I didn't want to go back to the version of myself who waited for a man that never came. I wanted something solid. I wanted something real. And somehow, with her, I started to believe I could have that again. One night, I walked into the living room to find her asleep on the couch, a book half open on her chest, her glasses still on. I stood there, watching her, the way her chest rose and fell slowly. She looked peaceful. Defenseless. Not the commanding figure everyone else saw. I knelt down gently and removed her glasses, placing them on the table. She stirred but didn't wake. For a moment, I reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. My heart ached. Not with pain, but with something deeper, something warm and terrifying. I pulled away before I could feel too much, before I did something I couldn't explain. But in that small act, I knew something inside me had already shifted. The next morning, she asked if I had covered her with the blanket she woke up under. I lied and said the housekeeper did. She didn't press, but the look she gave me said she didn't believe it. That look lingered all day. I found myself searching for excuses to be near her, coffee in the morning, shared glances during meetings, sitting a little closer on the couch. I hated how vulnerable it made me feel, how exposed. But I couldn't stop. I didn't want to stop. Every moment we spent alone became heavier with unspoken questions. Did she feel it too? Was I the only one confused? Was this still fake, or had we slipped into something real without even noticing? And then one night, while we stood by the window watching the rain, I turned to her and asked, "Have you ever wondered what this would be like if it wasn't a deal?" Her eyes flicked to mine, unreadable. She took a breath, looked out at the city, and said quietly, "Every day." I felt the air catch in my throat. Neither of us said anything after that. But it was enough. Enough to shake the walls we'd built. Enough to leave us both standing there, afraid to move, afraid to speak, because if we did, we'd have to face what was slowly becoming undeniable. It had been building between us for weeks. The pauses. The way our hands brushed when they didn't need to. The late nights sitting too close on the couch without speaking. The quiet looks that lasted too long. It was no longer just part of the arrangement, we both knew it. But neither of us dared to say it aloud. I kept telling myself that I was imagining it, that I was projecting emotions I didn't want to feel. That what I was starting to want from her wasn't allowed. This wasn't love. This wasn't supposed to be anything but survival. But the more I told myself that, the harder it became to breathe around her. The harder it became to ignore the pull between us. One evening, she walked into the kitchen barefoot, in a plain white t-shirt and leggings, her hair slightly messy from a long day. She didn't look like a CEO. She looked like someone who had let her guard down without meaning to. I was pouring tea, pretending to be focused on anything but her. She leaned against the counter beside me, not saying a word. I could feel her eyes on me. The silence stretched. I turned to her slowly. Our faces were inches apart. My breath caught. Her expression wasn't careful anymore. It was open. Unshielded. Vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. I need to ask you something, I said, my voice quiet, unsure. She nodded, waiting. Do you feel it too? She didn't blink. Didn't pretend not to understand. Her lips parted slightly, but it took her a second to speak. Yes, she whispered. Just that one word. It was enough to make my hands shake. I set the teacup down before it could slip. What are we doing? I asked, more to myself than to her. This was supposed to be fake. She stepped closer, barely an inch, but it felt like everything moved. It stopped being fake a long time ago, she said. The air between us changed. I could hear my own heartbeat. My eyes dropped to her lips, then back up to her eyes. I'm scared, I confessed, my voice trembling. So am I, she said. And then her hand reached for mine, not forced, not staged, not because anyone was watching. Just because she wanted to. Her fingers slipped into mine, warm and steady. I stared at our hands, the way they fit, the way they made my chest ache with something deep and dangerous. What happens now? I asked. She looked at me with something that almost looked like fear. Whatever you want to happen, she said. That we stood there for what felt like forever. The urge to kiss her was so strong it made my throat tighten. I leaned forward just a little, testing the air, watching her closely. She didn't move. Didn't pull away. Her eyes fluttered closed for half a second, then opened again. I saw every hesitation, every hope, every inch of restraint. But I couldn't do it. Not yet. Instead, I let go of her hand gently and stepped back. I don't want this to ruin us, I said. Her face fell slightly, just enough to sting. It won't, she promised, but I wasn't sure she believed that. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake replaying the moment again and again. Her voice, her touch, the look in her eyes. The want. The fear. It wasn't just chemistry, it was something bigger. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. I had been so sure that love was done with me, that trust was a luxury I no longer deserved. But with her, everything was shifting. Slowly, quietly, like the tide moving in without sound. I wasn't sure if I was ready. But I knew I wanted to be. The next morning, she made breakfast. It was awkward. We avoided eye contact. We made small talk. But the air was thick with what wasn't said. At one point, she set a plate in front of me and whispered, "I didn't sleep either." I nodded, swallowing hard. We ate in silence. But inside, I was screaming. I wanted to hold her. I wanted to kiss her. I wanted to say all the things I'd locked inside my chest for weeks. But I was terrified. Because if I gave in and it all fell apart, I didn't think I'd survive another heartbreak. Not from her. Not now. Not after everything we had slowly built, even if we never meant to, but I also knew something else. If I kept pretending I didn't feel anything, I'd lose her anyway. And that thought scared me even more. The pressure started building from the outside. Whispers from the boardroom, headlines filled with speculation, reporters asking questions that dug too close to the truth. Her brother, the man who had once promised to spend his life with me and then vanished without a word, was suddenly back in the picture, not apologetic, not remorseful, but vengeful. He'd caught wind of our arrangement and was determined to ruin it, not just out of spite, but because exposing the fake marriage would destabilize her hold on the company. It started with anonymous leaks, then press inquiries, then an unexpected meeting request. Claire was furious, but controlled, as always. I watched her pace in the living room with clenched fists and jaw tight. "He's going to drag you through the mud just to spite me," she muttered. I stood behind her, quiet for a moment. "Then let him," I said. She turned sharply. "No," she snapped, her voice sharper than usual. "You've already been humiliated once because of him. I won't let him do it again." It was the first time I'd seen her truly angry, not at the world, not at the press, but at the idea of me being hurt again. I stepped closer. "Why do you care so much?" I asked. She froze, then looked at me, and for a moment, her walls dropped completely. "Because I care about you," she said, her voice raw. "Not as part of some contract. Not as a headline. You matter to me, and I can't stand the idea of him getting to you again." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't hesitate. Our fingers intertwined naturally, like they were meant to find each other. But the moment was short-lived. The doorbell rang. A messenger handed Claire an envelope, legal threats, vague warnings, veiled threats of exposure. Her brother wasn't bluffing. Claire sank onto the couch, defeated for the first time. "He's going to ruin everything," she said. I sat beside her, heart pounding. "Then let's tell the truth," I offered, unsure where the courage came from. She looked at me, stunned. "Are you serious?" I nodded. "I'm tired of pretending. Maybe we started this for the wrong reasons, but something real came out of it. I don't want to hide anymore. Do you?" She hesitated, her lips parting, but no words came. Then, finally, she said, "No. I don't." But real wasn't easy. The next day, during a high-stakes board meeting, the tension in the air was suffocating. Claire stood before the executives with her usual grace, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the weight of what was coming. Just before the meeting ended, her brother walked in, smug and confident, as if he owned the room. "Quite the show you've put on," he said, voice laced with venom. "But we both know it's built on lies." Claire didn't flinch. "Then say what you came to say," she replied coldly. He smiled, waving a stack of papers. "A marriage contract, unsigned. Proof of fraud. Pictures of you both entering separate rooms after events. Shall I go on?" I stood beside her, my heart racing. Claire looked at me once, silent, asking for strength. I gave a small nod. She turned back to the room, calm but strong. "Yes, the marriage started as an arrangement," she said. Gasps followed. Murmurs. But she kept going. "But it's not fake anymore. We may not have followed the usual path, but the feelings, the partnership, the commitment, it's real now. And I won't let anyone reduce that to a scandal." Her brother looked momentarily thrown, then scoffed. You expect anyone to believe that? Claire stepped closer, her voice lower now. I don't care if they do. Because I know it. And she knows it. She looked at me again, and this time, there was no mask. No fear. Just raw honesty. I'm in love with her. It was the first time she had said it aloud. My breath caught. The room spun for a second. And then, somehow, I found my voice. And I'm in love with you, I said, barely louder than a whisper. But it was enough. Everything stilled. Even her brother didn't have anything to say. That night, back at the penthouse, we didn't speak at first. We just sat together, hands locked, our foreheads pressed together as the city glowed beneath us. The storm wasn't over. People would talk. The company might falter. But none of it mattered. For the first time, there was no pretending. No contracts. Just us. That I leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Our lips met, soft, hesitant, then deepening with everything we hadn't dared to say. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't neat. But it was real. And it was ours. The morning after everything came to light, we woke up with sunlight streaming through the massive windows of the penthouse. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt calm. She was beside me, hair a little messy, her arm resting lightly over my waist like she belonged there. I didn't want to move, afraid that if I did, the spell would break and everything would go back to the way it was, cold, staged, hollow. But she stirred, her eyes opening slowly. And when she looked at me, she smiled, not the polite kind she wore for boardrooms and press conferences. This one was soft. Real. Morning, she whispered. I smiled back, my fingers brushing her cheek. Still pretending? I asked. She shook her head, pulling me in closer. Not anymore. But the world outside our bed didn't slow down. News outlets were flooding with headlines about the confession. CEO admits fake marriage that turned real, ex-fiancé's sister falls for his bride, corporate scandal or true love? Her PR team was frantic. Shareholders wanted reassurance. Legal advisors wanted silence. Claire didn't care. She told them all the same thing, she wasn't ashamed. She wouldn't lie. And she wouldn't end something that had finally started to feel right just to please a boardroom. They could keep their votes. She would keep me still, a public statement had to be made. So we agreed to one final event, a press conference that would either quiet the noise or set everything on fire. The room was full of reporters, cameras flashing, questions flying before we even stepped onto the stage. She took my hand before walking out, squeezed it once. I could feel the tremor in her fingers, the pressure of everything riding on what we were about to do. We sat down in front of the microphones, and she began. I know many of you have questions, she said. Some of you feel betrayed. Some of you are curious. So I'm going to answer simply and honestly. Yes, our marriage started as a business arrangement. But somewhere along the way, it became something else. Something true. The room shifted. More murmurs. I could see familiar faces from the media, some looking shocked, others skeptical, some leaning in like they could feel the truth behind her words. She continued, not faltering once. I didn't plan to fall in love with her. But I did. And I won't apologize for it. Then she turned to me, in front of everyone, and said quietly, and I'll never walk away from you. Not now. Not ever. That was the moment I realized she wasn't doing it for the company. She was doing it for us. For me. I reached for her hand and whispered into the mic, and I'm not going anywhere either. We left the stage together, hearts racing, hands still linked. Outside, her brother was waiting by the elevator. He didn't look smug anymore. Just tired. He opened his mouth to say something, but Claire cut him off with a quiet, "Don't." And for once, he listened. He stepped back, letting the doors close between us. I leaned my head against her shoulder as we descended, feeling like something huge had finally ended, and something even bigger was beginning. Back at the penthouse, we kicked off our shoes, curled up on the couch, and laughed. Not out of amusement, but from the relief of it all. The weight lifted. The pretending over. She brushed her fingers through my hair and said, "I still don't know how we got here." I smiled, my heart full. "You married your brother's almost wife to save your company," I teased. She raised an eyebrow. "And accidentally fell in love?" I nodded. "Deeply." That night, she cooked dinner. It was awful. Burned pasta, undercooked vegetables. We ordered takeout instead and ate on the floor like two teenagers in love, not a CEO and her unexpected bride. Every part of it was real, no audience, no cameras. Just us. She kissed me between bites, and I laughed so hard I almost spilled my drink. When we curled into bed hours later, I watched her fall asleep with her arm draped around me, thinking about how love had found us in the most twisted, unlikely way. And yet, it felt like it was always meant to happen. I had been left at the altar, broken and humiliated. But somehow, in the wreckage, I found her. Or maybe, she found me. If you've ever been broken, if you've ever felt like love forgot you, let this remind you, sometimes, the most unexpected endings lead to the beginnings you never dared to imagine. Thank you for being here, for listening to our story. If it moved you, share it. Leave a comment. Subscribe for more stories like this one, raw, messy, real. Until next time, love always finds a way. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more emotional love stories, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Share your thoughts in the comments. Was the love real or just a beautiful accident? Share this story with someone who still believes in unexpected happy endings. Thank you for watching and supporting these faceless love stories. Your support means everything. Sparkling Heart.